Hi and welcome back. My name is Daniel and I'm back with a new video. In today's video, we are going to be deploying a Spring Boot application which is connected to a Postgres database on Render for free. So in this video, we are going to look at a number of things. One of them being how to connect a Spring Boot application to Postgres database. Okay, we are also going to create this Postgres database from Render. All right, the next thing will be creating a Docker image of our Spring Boot application, push it to Docker Hub, then deploy this image as a Docker container on the Render platform. And we are going to make use of the free package to test the functionality of our project. All right. So in here, I have a very simple web application and I am going to launch it so that we can have a look at what we have. So I'm going to make use of this command to create a local server so that we are able to access this web application on our browser. So I'll have that, press enter and give it time. Okay, so let's proceed to our browser and check if we are able to access that. Okay, so we are accessing that on port 8080. Okay, so we have a very simple web application here whereby I can navigate to the home page, which we currently see, and I can also navigate to the contacts page. Okay, so we are going to add a third page that we are going to use to test for our database connection. All right, so it is my assumption that you already have your web application. You have already defined the classes that will be mapped to the database as database tables. Okay, so what you are missing is how to configure a Postgres database on your application, and this is how to go about it. So the first thing is to add the required Maven dependencies. All right, so the two main dependencies that we need to add, we need to add them on this file that is pom.xml, and we are adding the dependencies under these dependencies block here. All right, so we have some two dependencies that we are going to add. So we have added this dependency and what we have here. All right, so this dependency is meant to handle database interaction. All right, and we have this other one here which highlights the current database that we are using, and for this case we are making use of the Postgres database, and of course we have the version here. All right, so once we are happy about the adjustment that we created, the next thing will be configuring the Postgres database in the applications.properties. All right, so we have the applications.properties file which stores our application configuration, and for this case we are going to adjust the database credentials. Okay, so it is under resources. Okay, so we have this application.properties. Okay, so in here this is where we are going to add the database credentials. All right, these are the lines that we require to establish a Postgres database connection. All right, so one thing, we need to adjust the password, the username, and the URL to our database. All right, so in this case we need now to switch to Render and create a Postgres database instance so that we can adjust the application.properties settings. All right, so I'll navigate to render.com. All right, then navigate to dashboard. So in case you're not logged in, then you'll be required to log in. I'll click on new, and in here we have this option of Postgres. So I'll click on that. Okay, so in here I have a form that I should fill in so that I get the database credentials. So for the name, I can talk of Spring Boot DB. Okay, then proceed. So in here, for the database and the user, we are going to leave them blank. They will be generated for us. Then for the region, we will leave the default, and for the version, we will still leave the default. All right, then everything else looks good. Then for the plan, for now we want to test the free version, so I'm going to select that. Then I'll proceed and click create database and give it time to create. So after a few seconds, we see that the status is available, meaning that our database is ready for use. All right. So scroll down. So we have the credentials down here. Okay. And looking at what we have under application.properties, we are supposed to adjust the password. That's one of them. So I'll come in here and copy the password. Okay. So I'll replace that with the password. Then we have the username. I'll also copy that. Then for the URL, all right, so we have both internal URL and external database URL. So essentially, I'll be making use of the external database URL, okay, because again, this application is currently being served locally. So we have the URL here, okay, and we are required to replace the various components here. Okay, with the external URL we copied, we have the database name here. So I'll copy this and paste it here. Okay, then we have this localhost. So looking at what we have in this URL, so the host starts from here, because if we look at, say, the first name that we have here, this is the username. All right, then what follows is the password, this password that we have here. Then the component that appears from the @ symbol all the way to where we have the database name, then that's the host name. So I'll copy that and replace the localhost here. Okay, so I'll comment out this line, that is the external database URL that I had pasted here, or even remove it. Then for the port, we have the port here, that is 5432. So we need to ensure that it matches what we have here. All right, and everything else in the application.properties looks good. All right. Okay, so the next thing will be creating a model class. Okay, so this is the class that will be mapped into the database as a table. All right, my assumption is you have already defined these classes. All right, so in my case, I'll define one very quickly. And this class will be created under a directory called model. And this model should appear in this path. I'll click that. Okay, and talk of new folder and talk of model. All right, press enter. Okay, so once the model directory has been created, so in here I'll create another class that I'll call test record.java. So I'll create a new file. Okay, so basically this is what we have, and I'll adjust the line here slightly. Okay, so I'll have that and everything looks good. I'm sure in your Spring Boot journey, you have already learned how to create these classes that will now be mapped into the database. So these are the two fields that we are going to be populating with data. All right. So once we are done creating the entity, the next thing will be to create a repository interface. So this repository interface will be extending the JPA repository, which gives us CRUD methods like the save, the count, and more. We are going to see that shortly. All right, so in here, we need to create a directory called repository if it does not exist. So let me check. So it should be under this directory here. Okay, and since it's not there, I'll be creating a new one. So I'll right click on this and talk of new folder. And in here, I'm going to talk about a repository. Okay, so once it has been created, I'll expand it and create a new file, test record repository.java. All right, so and in here again, I'll be adding a few lines of code. The next thing will be updating the controller. Okay, so in here, I already have a controller in place, which is helping us to get the home page and the contact us page. Okay, so this is where I'll add now the the mapping that will map to the database. All right. So as we said, we are going to create a new page that will display the database status. All right. So I'll be adding some to mapping. So again, one of them is just meant to return some database connection and count the number of records. All right. So whenever you visit this mapping, it will create a new record with just a message testing database connection. And of course, since we saw that we also have the ID will be populated automatically. Okay. Once that message instance has been created, it will again be saved under this line. All right. Then the next thing will be fetching the count of the number of messages that we have updated on the database. Okay. So similarly in here, instead of returning as just a response, we are going to return a template and embed the message, all right, including the total number of records that have been saved to our database. All right. So every time we access either this mapping or this one, it will be increasing the message by 1, and of course saving something like we are seeing here. Okay. So it is either what we have here or test from the template. Okay. So this is my assumption that you already have this configured properly. All right. Okay. So we again need to do an outer wired here. We need to add this line here. All right. And everything should look good. All right. So once we are done with that, the next thing will be updating the template or creating a new template that will handle this mapping. All right. So this should be other templates. So we see templates, and I'll be creating the same name here. So I'll talk of that.html. All right. And in here, I'll be adding some lines of code. So I can simply copy and paste what we have under home. But then in here, I need to add a mapping that will map the data that we are getting from the database. All right. So welcome to DB page. All right. Then I think everything looks good. So back to the browser. If we try to access this, it's not working as expected. So I'll go back to my terminal here. Okay. Then I'll execute mvn clean and install. So this is basically to make the necessary updates and create a build of our application. So let's see. It will also be able to test if our application is working as expected. Okay, so if you don't get errors here, then we believe the build has worked and everything should work as expected. So let's start our application again. Okay, everything looks good. Back to the browser, reload. Not yet. Give it time. Back to the browser, reload, and we see we are able to access the home page and the contact page. All right. So let's add a new navigation link here so that we are able to access the database as well. All right. So under say the home page, I'll copy and paste this line. And under home controller, we have this DB test. Okay, so in here, I need to adjust this. Okay, and also talk of test database. All right, then I can copy this line, add it to say the DB test here. I can also do that under the contact page. All right, so with that, let's go back, reload. Okay, we see a third link here. Okay, so let's go to contacts. Okay, then test database. All right, so we see welcome to database connected, total records we have 1. Okay, so if we do this again, okay, we see we now have 2 records, and if we continue doing this, we are increasing the number of records that are being saved to the database. So this is a confirmation that our Spring Boot application has successfully been connected to the Postgres database, and we are able to write some data into it and also retrieve some information from the database. All right. So the next thing is now creating a Docker image of our Spring Boot application. Remember, the database is hosted externally. So in this case, we are going to Dockerize the Spring Boot application, and it will be able to connect to the Postgres database as we created here. All right. Okay, so let's now look at the Docker file here. Okay, so this is what we are going to use. All right, with 5 lines of code, we are going to be able to Dockerize this application. Okay, so in here, we are talking of from OpenJDK, and we have the version of Docker that we are using here. Okay, we are using version 17. This should be in line with the current version of Java that you have installed on your system. So if we check, okay, so we see that OpenJDK, we have version 17. So this should match. Otherwise, you might end up getting some errors. All right. So this is the base image. Okay. Then in here, we also need to mention about the working directory. So this is the directory where our build image will be copied to. Okay. Then we are copying our build, and this build will be created at the targets. All right. Remember, when executing the mvn clean install, so this will basically install the necessary dependencies and create a build of our project. Okay, so it will be created under this name. All right, as defined in the pom.xml. So we have the artifact name and we have the version. So this will be concatenated, and then we have an extension of .jar. All right. So moving on to look at the Docker file, then as we have seen, we are working with port 8080. So this is what has been defined here. So it needs to match what we have here. Okay. Then finally, we have the CMD, which again is the command that will be used to run our application. So we simply talk of Java, all right, -jar and the app name. All right. So remember, when copying the build here, it was copied but given a different name. So whatever name that you have here, be sure to mention it here. All right. So once we have this, then we can continue and build our project. Okay. But before then, I can remove what we have here in the targets. I'll talk of remove targets and talk of detect. All right, or simply delete it from here. All right, then to create a build afresh, I'll talk of mvn, I'll talk of clean and install, and press enter and give it time. All right, so once that has completed, we see that the build of our project has been created again. So you shouldn't execute the Docker file before you create a build of this. All right, once we do that, we can now proceed and create a Docker image of our Spring Boot application. All right, so this is how to go about it. I'll talk of Docker, I'll build, okay, then I'll tag my image. Okay, so this again is where the tricks comes in. All right, so we intend to push this image into our Docker Hub. Okay, so in here, I need to make use of my Docker Hub username. All right, so this is my own Docker Hub username. So you have your own, please use yours. All right, so then I'll have that. So I'll talk of my Docker Hub username. All right, then proceed to give my image a name. Spring Boot app. I think that's good enough. I'll give a space and add a dot. Okay, so this dot is supposed to reference this particular Docker file, meaning that it is in the current working direct. So press enter and give it time. So within a few seconds, I have my image ready. So this is because I had already created up a similar build. So most of the layers were reused. All right. So I can talk of Docker images. Okay, so this is what we just created. All right, it has been created 19 seconds ago. All right, so this again is what we need to push to our Docker Hub. And remember, in case you don't have Docker installed, you need to install it first before building your Docker image. All right, so again, I'll proceed and push this image to my Docker Hub. All right, so I'll talk of Docker push. Okay, then give the name of the image that I want to push to my Docker Hub account. So I'll press enter and just give it time. Right, so we see that the image was successfully pushed. So I'll access my Docker Hub here. Okay, I'll click on that. And I see there is an image that has been pushed less than a minute ago. All right, so this is the image that we are going to deploy as a Docker container on the render platform. All right, back to the render dashboard here. So we have already configured the database, so I can navigate away from this. So I'll talk of new. Then there is this option of web service. Click on that. Then in here, I should talk of existing image. So click on that option. And in here, you are given the option to key in the image URL. All right. I'll come back to my Docker Hub dashboard here. And this is the image URL. All right. I'll copy that back to my render dashboard. Then I'll paste in what I have there. Okay. And if this image exists, then you will get a tick here. All right. Then just click on connect. Then in here, we need to give our application a name. I'll talk of Spring Boot with PostgreSQL. All right. Then I'll scroll region. I'll leave the default. Then for the packages, for now, let me make use of the free package. Then down, we do not have any environment variables to take care of. Then just click on deploy web service and give it time. All right, in about 5 minutes, we can see that your service is live, and we can also see here that the status has changed. All right, so again, we need to go back here and we see that a subdomain has been generated for us. So let's click on that. And there we go. So if we try to check on contacts, working, test database, okay, so we see that we are now connected to the database. Our application has been deployed on the render platform as a Docker container and with a connection to the Postgres database successfully. All right, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I believe this video was helpful. Be sure to give it a thumbs up, drop your thoughts in the comment section, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Bye for now.